Hi friends, welcome back. Today is the last day of our 12 days of homemade Christmas, day 12, and today we are going to be dehydrating sourdough starter. I love making sourdough bread, and it's one of those things that it's so much fun to share your sourdough starter with friends, but sometimes the holidays are a really difficult time to share your sourdough starter because everybody's so busy and you don't want to just hand your friend, here's a jar of sourdough starter. Now you have to start working when they're traveling and they're going, and so it's a lot more convenient to dry your sourdough starter for gifting instead of just giving them a live, active, ready to go starter. And then they have up to a year or two to actually rehydrate it and start working with it. They can start reading about it, they can start learning about it, and it's not quite so intimidating and makes a fantastic gift. As a side note, it also makes a great fail-safe in case you forget about yours or something happens and yours goes bad. Then you have some dehydrated starter on hand. But this is a fantastic gift for that home chef. Now, for the purposes of this video today, I'm not going to go into details about how to make a starter, but there's tons of videos on that, and we're actually this spring going to talk a lot more about starters and sourdough and all of those things. But I know that a lot of y'all already have starters, and this is just a great way to share the love, a super inexpensive gift. And if you go in the store, a dehydrated sourdough starter can be $15 to $30. So this really is an inexpensive way to share something valuable with your friends. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. It's not really difficult at all. I have been overfeeding my sourdough starter for several days leading up to this, so I had plenty of sourdough starter to dehydrate. And you can go ahead and dehydrate inactive starter that's been straight from your fridge, but the best way to dehydrate it is right after a feeding, right when it's at its peak kind of activity. And that way you get the peak amount of bacteria and things that you're dehydrating. But either way it'll work. It just might take a little bit more time on the other end to rehydrate it if you're dehydrating a dormant starter. Now, the absolute easiest way to dehydrate your sourdough starter is just to spread it out on parchment paper and let it set. But depending on the humidity, where you live, how much counter space you have, it could take a really long time for this to dehydrate, and then you're losing this huge counter space. If that's your option, that's great. We have an Excalibur dehydrator, and we're gonna put it in our Excalibur. Now, you can also do this in an oven on the bread-proof setting if it's temperature controlled. You do not want it to go very high. In fact, 90 degrees is probably great. 95 is good, but you don't wanna get any higher than that, or you'll start to kill the bacteria. If you're gonna do it in the oven, just spreading it out on a cookie sheet and parchment paper is totally fine. I have these silicone mats for my Excalibur dehydrator, and I have a 9-tray dehydrator. So we are gonna take these silicone mats and we're just gonna take our starter a little bit at a time and spread it out. And you want it fairly thin so that it dehydrates evenly. And that's about what your tray will look like. You want it super thin on here. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna fill all these trays. All right, so I got all 9 trays filled up. It was just enough to do all 9. And we're gonna go and we are gonna put this into the dehydrator. Let's head on over. But I'm gonna go ahead and go at a super low temperature of about 90 degrees here. All right, as you can see, our starter is out of the dehydrator, and I went ahead and left it in overnight because some of it was still not drying completely. My dehydrator was completely full, and a little bit of it was a little thick. So remember, with the dehydrator, the thinner you spread things, the faster they dry. But this is really easy to tell when it's dehydrated. It's rubbery if it's still wet a little bit, and then it becomes like crisp, like a chip almost when it's dehydrated. Now the next step is going to be to measure it out, because you want to make sure everybody has enough for their starter. So it typically takes about 4 grams of starter to really get it going, but I'm going to go ahead and put 10 grams of starter in each pouch. That way it's not the bare minimum. If something happens, they've got plenty of starter. So we've got a scale and I've got a little bowl. I'm going to tear the scale to 0 with the bolt on it, and then I'm going to crunch up and just crinkle it up. Crumble, crumble, until I've got 10 grams of starter in here. And this doesn't have to be super precise. About 10 grams will do. And then I've got these little bags, but you can put it in anything that's airtight. And I'm just gonna pour it in here and put a little tie on it, and then I've got dehydrated starter. So let's get all these in the bags, and then we'll talk about the rehydration process. So you definitely want to give instructions when you give your dehydrated starter. You can print them off and then attach this to the page and put them in a pretty Christmas card and then attach it inside. Or you could even, I'm going to link the directions that I use down in the comments, and you can make a QR code sticker and put the QR code sticker on here so that people can scan it and just have access to the instructions on their phone. Anyway, it works great. You can be as creative as you want. So what's going to happen with this dehydrated sourdough starter is that first, on day 1, they're going to take it and they're going to put it into 15 grams of warm water. Now by warm water, about 80 degrees. You don't want it hot, hot, because you don't want it to kill the bacteria in here. And you're going to let this set for 2 to 4 hours until it's dissolved completely. And then once it's dissolved completely, add 15 grams of flour and stir it up. And then you let it set overnight. And you'll want to cover this. Now, it might be several days before you start seeing activity, so don't panic. Then on day 2, you're gonna uncover it. You're gonna put 10 grams of water and 10 grams of flour. Now, I should say this about the water. If you use filtered water or distilled water, it's usually the best, because a lot of times our water from the tap has fluoride and chlorine and things that can kill those bacteria, especially when you're starting up your starter and it's not super strong yet. So you want to make sure you're using distilled water. And by the way, don't panic at these instructions. I'm linking them down below so you can have the full layout of all the things you need to do. It sounds overwhelming the first time you rehydrate one. It really is not. It really is simple. You just follow the steps. Then on day 3, you're gonna uncover it and you're gonna add 10 grams of water and 10 grams of flour to it. Now on day 4, you should really start to see some signs of bubbling. And if you don't, keep feeding it, keep feeding it, keep feeding it. But you really should by day 4 start seeing signs of bubbling. And at this point, you want to discard all of it except 15 grams of starter. To that 15 grams of starter, you're going to add 30 grams of water and 30 grams of flour. Stir it up, cover it up, and let it set until the next day. Day 5, you're gonna do the same thing. This time, it's gonna have started really getting active, and it should start to where it's doubling in size. You're gonna discard all but 15 grams of it again, and you're gonna add 30 grams of water and 30 grams of flour to it. Then on day 5, we're gonna do another thing. So at about 7 hours on day 5, after you fed it, check it again. And it should have tripled by now. It should be really hungry, really ready to go. This is a great time to kind of boost it up. So you're gonna do the same thing you did in the AM. You're gonna take it and discard all but that 15 grams. You're gonna feed it 30 grams of water and 30 grams of flour. And on day 6, your starter should be active and you can treat it like any other sourdough starter. There are a zillion delicious sourdough bread recipes online. So if you want to provide them with a great recipe, find one. What's the one you use? What's the one you love? And include it in there. And that's it for rehydrating your starter. And this really is a lot faster than having somebody to start one from scratch on their own. It does seem a little time consuming, but you'll get a much stronger strain of starter a lot faster. Y'all, this has been such a fun 12 days of Christmas. We are so thankful that y'all have been watching along and commenting and celebrating with us. It has been a lot of fun. We're still gonna be around for the month of December. We've got a lot of fun things planned. We've got some canning videos going up. We've got, I think, an Azure Standard haul. We've got a freezer meal video. It's all fun in December. So we're still gonna be here. And then in January, we start gardening. So we've got lots of stuff coming up. So we would love for you to join us on that ride. Hit that subscribe button and you can hang out with us whenever we post new videos. Y'all have a wonderful and blessed holiday season.